seat taken?
Nobody's in the seat, then I ain't taking, son.
So this is, Sabacc?
The Block.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to Sabacc the Block. We are here to break down the recent news that the Acolyte is unfortunately not coming back for season 2. And we're also going to talk about the future of Star Wars. And joining me to do all that, I have Rachel in the house. Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, great enough, given a good show got canceled. But what can you do?
What can you do? We're going to get into it, obviously, in this episode. But the first things first, what we do in every episode of Sabacc the Block when we have a new guest is we break down your Star Wars stories. So, Rachel, what is your Star Wars story?
It's long. So I grew up, my brothers are 10 and 20 years older than me. And so Star Wars is kind of like the one thing that all three of us love. It is very funny to see the difference in the things that we love, because my oldest brother loves stormtroopers, loves Vader, loves the like Empire stuff. My middle brother was the one who was like, Boba Fett is cool. And I was like, I don't believe you. And then I was a really big Chewie fan. Chewbacca is my favorite Star Wars character. I love him very dearly. And it took me a while to like love Leia, which I feel like is the millennial girls thing, that they love Leia. And it took me a long time to love her. But I remember I saw Air Force One in theaters with my family and was like, Harrison, who's this guy? I love the president. I was like 6. And my brother was like, she can't love Harrison Ford in Air Force One more than Star Wars. So he showed me them again as like a 6 and 7-year-old where I understood them more. From there, saw the re-releases. The prequels were like my jam. Saw, I think, Revenge of the Sith like 10 times in theaters. And had like a bootleg that I watched a bunch. And then it was like the rest was history. That was, I got into the EU. I loved the books. And it was just my stuff from then on.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a similar Star Wars story to a lot of people, because a lot of people did kind of grow up on the, OGs, watching the OGs, and then going into the prequels in theaters, which is kind of funny because I know we're seeing a new Star Wars generation that hasn't seen the prequels in theaters, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel so old. I'm like, what do you mean you did Phantom Menace? That was the first time you saw it during the re-release.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you mean Clone Wars, the animated show? Like, I'm like, bro, no. This was in theaters, and it was a movie before it was a show. Definitely crazy. But yeah, I feel like that's very similar to mine as well. Obviously, I watched the Phantom Menace in theaters and Attack of the Clones. I think I saw, like, Star Wars, I'm going to echo your Revenge of the Sith thing, because Star Wars to me is the one movie that I rewatch in theaters a million times. Mm-hmm. And it started with Attack of the Clones for me, where I think I saw that 6 times when I was a kid, like 6 times in theaters, which was like my record, or 5. It could have been 5. And then from there, watching Revenge of the Sith like 3 or 4 times.
Revenge, I was old enough that my mom, like that summer that Revenge came out, they were like, we can just drop the kids at the movie theater. They're old enough to know what they're allowed to do, because we were like 13 and 14. And I just spent days in movie theaters watching Revenge of the Sith. And like I say jokingly that Hayden Christensen sitting up shirtless in that bed changed my life, but it fully did. Like that was the millennial straight girl experience, was seeing Hayden Christensen in that scene and being like, oh, what's this? But yeah, that was like when I was probably like, I would say like 8 to 12 was when I really got into like my favorite character in Star Wars outside of Chewie is Mara Jade. Like I love the EU characters, which is why people got mad at me during the sequel trilogy, because I was like, they're the twins. They're not in love. They're the twins. But yeah, my Star Wars story is just, I love what I love, and I'm very obnoxious about what I love in Star Wars.
Totally get it. The same way. All right, let's move on to the green Psylocke for this episode.
Full Sabacc.
Sorry, that was full Sabacc. The green Psylocke.
If you'd only had this little green Psylocke.
So our green sideline for today is all about the Acolyte not coming back for season 2. Rachel, I know this was kind of breaking the internet, or at least Star Wars internet, for a little bit once it was announced on deadline. How are you feeling about this news, and obviously how it was presented?
I don't feel great because it was very creative and fun to see a Star Wars story, not with the Skywalkers, and kind of its own thing, and really exploring a world outside of the Star Wars or the Skywalker saga, because even shows like Ahsoka and The Mandalorian are still within the same era as the Skywalker saga. So I liked that this was removed and we saw characters, however briefly and from the back of the head, of like Yoda, who has, lived through what's going to come, but also this was a Yoda we never saw before, and we had all this potential. And I think that's what hurts the most, is that like the potential of what was going to come next is just kind of dead in the water, because it's a time period that they're not necessarily going to have to revisit, where if they canceled The Mandalorian or even Andor, that's still close enough to stuff that they're telling that they would have to kind of address it.
Yeah, it's incredibly disappointing in my opinion. I just feel like it's hard not to detach this from the toxic side of the fandom that has been extremely vocal during the run of the Acolyte and before its run, honestly, just getting ready for a complete destruction of the show, even though they haven't even seen the show. It's hard to detach that side of the fandom from this news, because I do feel like it feels extremely reactionary, and it feels very much like Lucasfilm is sending a message. And I know this is not from Lucasfilm, and this is from Deadline and sources and asking them, and they're not saying we canceled the show. They're simply saying we're not picking it up for season 2. However, it just feels like this is almost an avalanche of just decision making, of cutting more and more shows and cutting more and more programs and films that have different types of characters, and instead of presenting them and uplifting them in any kind of way, almost kind of like throwing them under the bus, like completely. And I don't know, how do you feel about this toxic side of the fandom intertwined with this news and almost kind of feeling like a victory for them in some way?
It really does. And I wrote about it because I was like, it feels like they said, okay, well, like the toxic dude bros win because they're the real Star Wars fans. Like I saw a lot today about people saying, primarily like that female fans were Star Wars tourists, and that they just kind of dabble in Star Wars, which what a cancellation like this does is fuel that mindset that women and minorities are not actually fans of this franchise, and it belongs to those dudes, which is fundamentally not true on a lot of levels. Like I talk about a lot how without women, Star Wars wouldn't exist. And I know they say Star Wars is female, but it is quite literally true, because without Marsha Lucas, without Carrie Fisher, without the women who like reined George Lucas in, we would not have the Star Wars that we currently have. And so hearing the news paired with, all of those kinds of guys celebrating it and attacking people, like I guess one of them talked about my article on their thing, and I was just like, oh, cool, I'm not going to look at my notifications for a while because I knew what was going to happen. It feels like they're feeding into what they want versus what fans who actually genuinely love Star Wars want. And it just feels a little disheartening.
Yeah, I feel like it's just hard because we've been dealing with this for a while. I've written an entire post about it, like a thread thing I did, because to be honest, I've been really involved in the YouTube side of the Star Wars fandom. I used to be an intern and then an associate producer for another show that was just talking a lot about Star Wars, and it was a pretty popular channel. So I was behind the scenes when it came to a lot of dissertation and comments as far as what happened with the prequels, not the prequels, the sequels, with Rey, with The Last Jedi, with The Force Awakens. And I know this very well. And that's something that a lot of people make assumptions, and it's like, oh, this happened a couple of years ago. I'm like, no, this happened like before Force Awakens came out
Mhm.
on like 4chan and stuff. So this was pretty bad, and the almost like ripple effect, avalanche effect, whatever you want to call it, of just this growing and growing and growing and becoming what it is today, where they can kind of say they got a victory and kind of say like, bigotry wins. And big
Mhm.
is what Disney is now currently concerned about getting their dollars. They want the bigots to watch their shows and watch their movies and give them money. And they're afraid of losing them, so they don't want to show this cast or the show or this different perspective inside the Star Wars universe that isn't what they want to see. When in reality, they're always going to be bad faith, because that's always where they came from. They came from a bad faith place. So this just feels like even more of that. And then on top of that, Rachel, a question I'll throw to you: the lack of defense for the cast and
Mhm.
the crew of the Acolyte from Lucasfilm. How does that kind of add to this feeling that a lot of fans are feeling as far as the Acolyte not coming back?
I mean, it adds a lot because like they started to kind of help, and I do think it's complicated because it's twofold. Because when they do defend the creatives that they've hired to do this job and talk about Star Wars, or people like my one friend, I'm not going to name her because I don't want people to hate on her any more than they already do. But my one friend gets a lot of hate simply because she hosts a show. But they do protect certain people, but I think it makes it almost worse at times, because then you have these bigots who are like, Star Wars, you shouldn't be defending them. Like, you should just like let fans say what they want to say. And so I think they're like, Lucasfilm and Star Wars are in kind of this predicament where it's like, we need to protect these people, but at the same time, if we protect these people, it's going to make it 10 times worse, because all of these people are going to double down on what they're already saying. And so it's, on the one hand, I really want Lucasfilm to stand up, because Amanda Steinberg, they shouldn't have to get up there and make a song about the people hating on them. We shouldn't have to listen to racists talking about Lee Jong Jae and his accent. We shouldn't have to like see all this stuff. But is Lucasfilm saying something going to make it 10 times worse for these people, because the racists are going to double down and be like, oh, well, now Lucasfilm is defending you? And it's weird, because like I love what they did for Moses during Obi-Wan, but it made it such a bigger thing because Lucasfilm said something. And but I don't know. It's you lose either way. And I
Yeah,
think that's what's scary, is because then is Lucasfilm just not going to use those stories or use those voices to tell a Star Wars story because of this, which is not what I think. I don't think anyone who is of sane mind in the Star Wars fandom actually wants that.
yeah, it is complicated. I've personally been on the belief that it's better to ignore these trolls and
Mhm.
these bad faith commenters, and engaging with them almost kind of adds credence to what they're saying, which in reality it has no credence. I know a lot of people were retweeting that fire in space tweet, and it just bummed me out, because I'm like, do you know who this guy is? Because I do, because he's made attack videos about me and attack videos about every person of color that you can possibly imagine. He's not saying this in good faith.
Mhm.
He's not actually talking about fire in space. He's talking about Amanda being the lead in the show, and how it's unfair that a black woman is the lead in the show. That's his real issue. He's just making shit up so that you guys eat it up and say, yeah, oh, that's a good point. Fire in space. And it's like, it's coming from a person who's trying to sow division and bigotry and hatred and trying to get people to turn on the show. So I've always said, ignore these people. And I truly believe that. However, it's tough to not have the studio or a company, or let's say a business, right? Like if you're a part of a business or a store, you're an employee, and you have a racist outburst inside that store, you want your manager, you want your store to stand up for you. Maybe, you don't want your friends to gather around or other people to gather around, but you want actual professional intervention. And I feel like Lucasfilm has refused to do that, because they don't want to seem like, we don't want this kind of customers coming into our store. We do want you coming into our store. We want you buying our products. So we're not going to say you're not welcome here. when we should be saying you're not welcome here. And that's why I feel very much frustrated with Lucasfilm's lack of standing up for Amandla and the cast, because I do feel like it would send a strong message to these people that they are actually not welcome, and that we actually don't want your money, and that we don't care how much money you have. If you bring hatred into this fandom, and if you bring hatred to this cast, you simply cannot enter this store, or you shouldn't enter this store. I want you to feel unwelcome. And I really feel like that's what Lucasfilm should be doing. But instead, it almost feels like they're tripling down on it. And this is going all the way to my reaction. I was in Hall H for Comic-Con. This whole like RDJ thing. I really do feel like that's the biggest sign for me that they're really tripling down on this, because they're just kind of like, let's just get one of the most famous actors we have. Let's just bring him back and let's do it again. And we'll run it back with same directors. And it's like, they're afraid of really trying to diversify their content, so much so that they're almost like retreading their greatest hits before they included any people of color, when it was just Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. And it's like, this is I think it's a pretty clear message that they don't care about people of color, and they don't care about having actual true different voices speak in the Star Wars universe.
Well, it's so interesting you said that, because it's like with the RDJ thing, especially, I love Riri Williams. She's one of my favorite characters of all time. And if you really wanted to get people back interested and like care about, especially like Tony Stark, you could have just cast him as her AI. And I feel like then people would have really cared about a story that has a black, like one of the smartest characters in the entire MCU, female lead. And instead they were like, he's Dr. Doom, which is fine. That's his. Listen, there's comic backing. I get it. Yada, yada, yada. However, there are ways that you could have connected that back where it like amplified a non-white voice. And instead it was like, no, we're going to make it about him. Interested to see what they do. But I'm like, you could have helped Ironheart. And I think that is a similar situation where it's like, you could have greenlit a season 2 of The Acolyte. You could have scaled it back if you were like, hey, it cost too much money to make in the way we did. Scale the thing back, but still make that story. So then you weren't feeding into these people, because I think a big problem, especially with shows like The Acolyte, is if we had an issue with the show, we couldn't even talk about it, because you were then seen as either one of those people, or they would be like, see, even these fans don't like this thing. And it's like, no, it's not the same thing. I had a critique of the show that I now cannot even say, because it is turned into a whole thing. And it's, again, I do think Lucasfilm should say something, but at the same time, I'm like, is that going to help? Or is it just going to make the entire situation for everyone, including the cast, 10 times worse?
I see where that's coming from. I just feel like my perspective has developed more and more throughout time, because I do feel like part of it is letting them know that they're not welcome. And I feel like calling attention to that, specifically naming them and saying, hey, you there, you're not welcome here. And we support Amandla. We're 100% behind Amandla. And if you're saying this stuff, then please leave. And I feel like that would be beneficial, but they're afraid because they don't want to lose customers. They just don't.
It'd be so nice if they, I don't know, use the cease and desist for the person, or cease and desist, sorry, for the person who has the name of the franchise branded into every single thing the person does, including selling knockoff versions of things that they themselves sell. Like, that's where I don't get, I'm like, he's taking money from you and you're not mad about that, but you are catering to people like that, versus fans who want to go to Galaxy's Edge and pay for your lightsabers or pay for your Star Wars things. You don't want to cater to them, but you would rather cater to these guys because they've weaponized racism and sexism to their advantage.
Yeah, and it also kind of leads to another conversation about what's happening in the fandom in general when it comes to this toxic side of the fandom, almost influencing people who are kind of on the I watch Star Wars like once a year kind of side of the fandom, where now their perspective changes so much so from just the ripple effect of all this negativity and hatred, right? So it starts from the extremely toxic, openly bigoted side of the fandom, and then it kind of ripples into the, oh, I heard that show was really bad, and it's like there's no communication because they just hear from a friend of a friend of a friend, and it kind of works its way down to just like, don't watch new Star Wars in general. It's just trash. It's just bad. And that again comes from that side of the fandom. So there's no way of dividing it, which is why you don't want to sound too negative when it comes to these kind of shows, because you don't want to give credence to that side of just complete divisiveness. So how do we balance this out when it comes to just people trying to tune into new Star Wars, who want to see new, fresh perspectives and who aren't filled with hatred? How do we try to mediate and just repair this fandom?
It's something I literally just thought of right now, and I was like, oh, maybe this is where I find my disconnect with like fighting these trolls. Is a lot of this started happening online, especially. Like, granted, my whole life I've dealt with, oh, you're a Star Wars fan, what's the machete order? What's this thing? But it's gotten so toxic, like, since the passing of Carrie Fisher, in a way that she would be like, shut the F up to people who said stuff. And when you have Princess Leia saying that to you, I think that is when people would be like, oh, well, Carrie Fisher told me I was wrong. Maybe I should stop and listen. And I think that is what maybe this fandom is missing, is that one person who you never want to tell you, like, hey, you're stupid for thinking the thing you're thinking. And it was always Carrie. And I think Mark Hamill kind of falls into that a little bit, but he doesn't necessarily look at people who are so toxic and be like, you're not welcome here, in the same way she would. And unfortunately, that is kind of what we're missing, is somebody who is not just the studio, because all of those guys are going to turn the studio and be like, you're doing this for the money. But if you have someone who is a hero of people saying like, yeah, no, what you're saying is wrong, it really does drive home the message that like they're a bunch of fans who don't know what they're talking about. And that, like, it's weird to think about, because I'm like, yeah, Carrie Fisher kind of was that person who would have looked at these guys and been like, you're dumb. And we don't have that anymore.
We don't know. And it also kind of leads into the idea of just not wanting to be online during this fandom, right? You were talking about not wanting to post too much. I've personally, like, this is the only Star Wars thing I do, is this show. I've tried avoiding posting that much. I'm on Threads now a lot more. Threads has this positive side of Star Wars, but I never thought I would get into Threads at all. But I just do it for Star Wars. And it just feels like you don't want to say anything, because you just don't feel like dealing with the trolls and dealing with the hatred and dealing with the comments. You just don't feel like it. And I don't think it necessarily comes from a place of like fear or cowardice. I just feel like it comes from a place of like protecting your peace. You just don't want to deal with people bashing you for liking a show, and it just gets tiring after a while. How do we re-engage that kind of positivity within the fandom itself, and not, be afraid, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Well, it's hard. It's like, I don't know if you know Tommy Stella, but like his tweets about the Acolyte have been like making me laugh out loud. Like, he made a joke that was like, we're never going to know who this guy is. And it was literally like the back of Yoda's head. And he was like, what are we going to do? We're not going to know who Yoda is. And things like that I miss. Like, I miss being able to make a joke about Star Wars and not have 40 dudes be like, you're a fat cow who knows nothing. Like, because that's not fun to me. And I do think one of my favorite things to do in this world is take a picture with Chewbacca, because I'm 5'2". So every time I see a Chewbacca, I take it where it is like this part of my face and then the top of Chewbacca's head. But if I say Chewbacca's my favorite character, all of these dudes flood your comments where you're like, that's no one's favorite character. What are you talking about? And part of me wants to say we should just all keep, excuse my French, but shit posting, because I think that is where the fun of Star Wars is where we all just make these stupid jokes about this franchise and ignore them. But that is way easier said than done than just you do it and then some guy says something that just hits you on the wrong day and you're like, I never want to post about this franchise again.
Yeah, it's tough. Obviously, memes always help, but I feel like memes have died down though. That's the only issue. Is like, I kind of wish we saw more Star Wars memes in general. So
Listen, every time when given the chance, I will talk about my favorite space virgin, Luke Skywalker, being a drama queen. And that is the one thing that I don't care what these guys say to me. They can tell me I'm wrong, and I'm like, am I how? He was so mad he couldn't go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. You cannot tell me that's not a drama queen.
yeah, absolutely. There's no denying that. Let's move on to full Sabacc for today.
Full Sabacc.
Our full Sabacc for today is all about the future of Star Wars. So, Rachel, I want to ask you, how are you currently feeling about the future of Star Wars?
Worried for them kids. I'm really excited about Skeleton Crew because the Goonies is one of my favorite things. So the Goonies set in space sounds like perfection to me. Really worried about Neil. Just kind of like I worry for those kids because adults can be like, yeah, well, that's a guy being racist. That's a guy being sexist. They don't know what they're talking about. They're saying this because they're mad I'm a woman in Star Wars or whatever it may be. But we've seen it with Jake Lloyd. We've seen it with even Vivian Lyra Blair and how they treated her, which I know a lot of people like myself really try to like step up and protect her because seeing Leia have a storyline like that meant a lot to a lot of Star Wars fans, myself included. But I just worry because that's a show about kids. And I know they have Jude Law who kind of like, he knows it. And I feel like he'll kind of step up. But at the same time, I'm just like, if Lucasfilm was ever going to make sure that people were okay, they better make sure those kids are okay.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? I just feel like it's kind of a who knows situation. We just don't know what's going to happen around that time. Obviously, you can try and ask for decency, but I feel like decency has been kind of thrown out the window a long time ago. So I don't have high hopes for Skeleton Crew. I just don't. I'm feeling pretty pessimistic, to be honest. I just feel pretty pessimistic about the entire industry in general and the direction we're going. I just feel like the studio corporatification of every single beloved IP where any artistic merit is now trying to be watered down or just kind of deleted, to be honest. It just feels like they're heading in a direction that feels very much like they don't want to have any more marginalized voices, different voices, unique voices. They want to have more of the established, old dude voices, and that's kind of what they want to cater to. And I feel this when it comes to Marvel, DC, like pretty much every major franchise that we're seeing a lot more openness when it comes to them not wanting to engage with diversity in front of the camera and diversity behind the camera, to be honest. I'm seeing the Zaslav effect of it all, where it's just not good. And this kind of idea of like, this is what I want, this is what people want, and I want to see more of the same. And especially, and I know a lot of people, I lost like, I don't know how many followers for just saying this. I know a lot of people like Deadpool and Wolverine, but I just feel like that kind of adds to it. This whole like super cameo fest corporatification, two strong white dudes, buff guys, kicking ass and doing ninja moves. It's just like exactly what we're going to get for the next 10 years. And that's kind of it. And we're not going to see anything else creative or different. I just feel the way Marvel handled the Marvels really bugged me the wrong way. The way they threw Nia DaCosta under the bus, the way the film was edited, it really felt like, oh my God, like this is the most studio edited movie I've ever seen. And I wish they wouldn't cut projects down and edit it in a way where it's like, let's just make it fast and quick, $140, like an hour and 40 minutes, and cut all the good stuff out and all the stuff that makes sense and makes it a cohesive film that Nia DaCosta had in the film, and they cut out of it. And then they blame the director once it bombs or fails or once it didn't make enough money, when in reality, she had a really good quality product on her hands in a good movie, but you just couldn't see it through all the cutting that they were just doing, just shedded the movie completely. And then obviously seeing it with The Acolyte too, like that was my biggest issue with The Acolyte, is it felt very much like you could see someone in the editing room being like, yeah, hurry it up, cut this, cut that. And you could feel that. And I felt like that's not, I don't think that comes from Leslie. I'm pretty sure that comes from Disney studio heads. And then that leading to people complaining about it and saying it feels like an incomplete story. It feels too rushed. It feels like there's not enough time to breathe within scenes. And I felt like all that is very corporate. It's very corporate studio mandated kind of stuff because they want to have the lowest attention span possible to watch these shows. This kind of corporification fears me. It just scares me, Rachel.
Well, here's the thing. I agree. I also think COVID, I think, really kind of messed a lot of things up because look at WandaVision, a show that is truly one of my favorite things on this planet, like a beautiful piece of media within a larger franchise. And I thought, cool, we're going to get more of like things like this. We're going to get these unique stories that are specific to characters, but also like have this like vision. And then I think with COVID, it's like we're still catching up because like then you look at like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and you're like, oh, well, why did no one tell you to watch the thing that directly comes prior to this? Because you're just telling the same story but not as good. And you're also making this anti-hero a straight up villain, which makes no sense. And whatever. Jump to shows like The Acolyte, which I think The Acolyte is unique in that it's its own time. You don't really have to like play into the grand scheme of things, but you also have like Ahsoka, for example, not necessarily fitting in tone at any given point. Like Ahsoka's tone was all over the place, and I think that was because we saw an Ahsoka in live action in The Mandalorian who had a completely different tone than the Ahsoka we saw in the show, but then all of the other characters in Ahsoka were in their own kind of bubbles. And because COVID was trying to just like, well, people are watching more TV. Let's make more TV. Let's throw an Ahsoka show together. Let's throw this thing together. Let's do this. That we are now kind of hitting the end of that. And we're going to see a change. And it's going to be like, especially like with Marvel, like you can tell in how they've limited everything down. And it's like, no, WandaVision worked. People liked Agatha. We're doing Agatha all along. Let's get a cast that people are going to care about, and then maybe we'll introduce characters that'll happen in the future. And I think The Acolyte was kind of the end of that for the Star Wars franchise, where it was like, this was our last COVID pick, and now we're going to like head into things that are a little bit more specific, have these like their bottle things like Skeleton Crew, which is like, we wanted to make Goonies in space, and kind of just go in that route. So in that regard, I'm excited because I feel like maybe it'll be more specific projects and we'll have another Andor-esque show, and it won't be like as contentious, but also that's me being hopeful.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let's get to what is coming up. Obviously, we talked about Skeleton Crew a little bit. We have Andor Season 2. We have Ahsoka Season 2. We have The Mandalorian and Grogu. And then, obviously, the Rey movie. When you hear these projects, do you feel like, is there a specific direction that you see Star Wars is heading down now?
Yes and no. I think Marvel has a very specific overall view where Star Wars is more, we're just telling Star Wars stories in the Star Wars universe, which I don't dislike. I like that more than I think Marvel has always been linear. And I like that Star Wars has, for the most part, never been, because it's like you have those three stories and then it's like, who knows where we're going next? We could be going 25 years later, 25 years before, who knows? And so I do like that Star Wars is continuing the trend of, I don't know, whatever we decide we want to do next is what we're doing.
How do you feel about the kind of little that I didn't even know about this till literally when the news was announced? The little like Filoni feud between fans. Like there's like one side who's like Filoni till I die, and then one side who's like get rid of Filoni, and it's just his movies now. I don't know if you have a side to that, or if you just kind of feel you have an opinion on this. But how do you feel about the Filonification of the Filoniverse that we're now in?
As a Pittsburghian, so same city as Filoni.
You got to stay loyal.
I don't dislike Filoni. I think, given the white men that they were picking, between him and JJ, I'm more excited that it is Filoni, because Filoni at least is coming from a point of, this is what I learned from George Lucas, versus someone like JJ who, wanted to play with his toys. as I like to say, because that is why Palpatine is in that last movie. Is that is a man who just was like, I want to play with Palpatine, but Palpatine's dead. He's alive now. Like that. I would much rather have someone like Filoni, who at least is coming from a place of, here's the knowledge I have that was given to me by the guy who created the thing. But I also do understand people who don't like him, because I do think he gets very like, no, but this is what it is. You didn't create it. George did, and George doesn't even know things. He made Luke and Leia kiss each other, and then the next movie goes, yeah, I guess they're siblings. He doesn't know what's going on. So I think people hold the Bible of Star Wars a little too preciously, and they forget that, like, George Lucas didn't know what he was doing. He had an idea, tried to do it, and a lot of people helped him, because Empire Strikes Back was not necessarily a George Lucas thing. It was everybody else. It was Larry. It was Harrison. It was Carrie. It was all these people who were like, I don't think that that's what would happen. And I think, Filoni is falling a little bit too hard in the, but this is what George said, and forgetting that George Lucas also didn't know what he was doing 90% of the time.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like Filoni obviously gets a lot of grace because of the whole I'm the apprentice to George kind of thing, and also because of obviously his work in Rebels, Clone Wars, that kind of side of the fandom that is very, very positive, and pretty much conclusively enjoys that animation side of Star Wars. The only thing I do fear, and this is more getting into the Favreau side of it, is the Mandalorian-ness of it all. How are you feeling about the Mandalorian and Grogu?
Oh, see, I love the Mandalorian.
Okay.
The Mandalorian is like, of the new stuff, that is the one that I'm like, cool, I can watch this show. There's no, like, no one's getting mad. Like, I can just watch the Mandalorian. It's going to be fine. I get to maybe on occasion look at Pedro Pascal's face. If not, it's okay. I still love Din Djarin. Like, I'm fine. There's my Grogu right there. I love the Mandalorian a lot. I do think Favreau and Filoni are a good combo, because Favreau will like go like this a little bit every once in a while with Filoni. That because Favreau is one of the reasons why we have the MCU as it currently stands, and I think he understands, like, I get the lore, but you got to like rein it in, because people are not gonna necessarily have seen all of this animated stuff, and you're gonna make the Ahsoka, and people are gonna be like, I don't know what 90% of this show is. And which I think is the problem with Ahsoka, is that if you missed an episode of Clone Wars or Rebels, you were like, I have no idea why there's 12 characters I've never heard of, which isn't good.
Yeah.
Even as a Star Wars fan who knows that stuff, it's not good storytelling if you're giving someone a Bible and saying you need to read this whole thing to understand one episode of television.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, for me, when it comes to the Mandalorian and Grogu, I just kind of feel like I feel like I'm not the only one who says this too, like a buffer film where it's just getting people's feet wet for future Star Wars movies, because it's been so long and people are extremely familiar with the Mandalorian and Grogu. Like, I'm pretty sure it's probably the most popular characters since The Rise of Skywalker finished up its story. I feel like the Mandalorian kind of took over as extremely popular, and more people know about it. So it'll probably do pretty well box office wise, which is why they want to start off their films with that, because it is a safe bet. At the same time, I just feel like there are limitations to the story. It's very one track, one simple kind of doing my thing. Some pirates steal my baby. I got to get my baby back. Like, whatever it's going to be, like, it feels a little bit too simplistic for me, and a little less magical, which is what I preferred Star Wars. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like Force-centered magical. I just mean like just a different kind of character, a character with a little bit more empathy and personality and a face. I think that'd be nice. If Din just takes off his helmet, obviously it's not going to happen. But
and then just go like this.
Yeah,
Moving
exactly.
Your body.
For real. But I just feel like when it comes to that, I want to see a little bit more than just that kind of simplification of Star Wars that a lot of fans have been like, yeah, that's what we want. And I know fans love it, but I really want to see a little bit more creativity behind the camera when it comes to those type of stories. Speaking of which, how are you feeling about the creation of new projects and new shows, whether it is on existing characters or whether it is brand new stories?
I want more, which is why it is really upsetting about the Acolyte, because that was all new characters with the exception of, Vernestra and like Yoda. But like for the most part, it was all new characters that most people had never seen in live action. And it was really exciting. Like I've wanted a young Leia story for so long, or even like, I don't know, give me Billy Lord as Leia between Return of the Jedi and like when she's a senator. I think what is the book? Is it Bloodline, the book where like Leia is a senator and you get to actually see her like
I think so. Yeah.
doing stuff.
I always confuse it with Resistance.
Yeah,
Rising?
I think it's Bloodline is the one where she's like like you literally see her as a senator and like Han's doing whatever Han wants to do. Like I want a Leia story within there, but at the same time I'm like, are people going to care? Because as much as these toxic people love to throw around like, oh, I loved Leia, I'm like, no you didn't. You loved a woman that George Lucas said couldn't wear a bra because bras would choke somebody in space. Like that's who you loved. Or you loved Slave Leia. You didn't love a character like Leia who wanted to be in charge and wanted to make diplomatic decisions. And so I want stories like that. And I really want creatives who are willing to take that risk and put these characters out there. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to see characters I love trashed online. Like I would love a Mara Jade story more than anything in this world. But I'm like, do I though? Because how many of these guys are gonna be like, she's not cool enough for Luke, who's a baby. Sorry, I hate Luke Skywalker. I love Mara Jade and hate Luke Skywalker. So I think it's very funny that these guys are so gung-ho about Luke Skywalker. But yeah, I don't know. I want them, but at the same time, I worry. Because at this point, what do you
Right now, I'm super worried, like extremely worried. Like I'm fully convinced now that, well, not fully convinced, but I'm just worried that we are probably going to get a Luke show. Why not? Let's get a Luke show. And it's just going to be
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, CGI Luke doing backflips, and you see his face like maybe once in the episode, and you just see the back of his head the rest of the episode.
Yoda.
Yeah, and he's training his first student. I don't know. Something like that is probably what we're going to get. I just feel like it's very, very, very dire. And this is coming from a person who is the biggest Rebels fan. Mm-hmm. So seeing the Rebels come on screen in live action is something I've been asking since like season 2. I just love these characters. I read the freaking book before the show came out. The Kanan and Hera book. I forget what it's called. But that's how excited I was for this. I think it's called New Dawn. But I just feel like as much as I love Hera and I love Sabine and I love these characters so much, I just don't feel like it's enough to just have these characters be the future of Star Wars, even though I think they can. Like, I feel like Hera could carry the planet. She can just do anything. But at the same time, I do want to see new characters come up and rise up, which is why I know a lot of people don't like Solo. And
I was going to bring up Solo because it's made me so happy this entire time because I love Solo.
Yeah, I'm using all the branding right now for Solo.
Yeah, I love Solo so much. And one of my favorite interviews I've ever done was, it was at Tribeca last year, right before the strike and everything. And I interviewed Alden Ehrenreich, and him and I was like, I feel really weird. I want to talk to you about Han Solo. Like, you can see I have a Leia tattoo. Like, I love Star Wars. And I said to him, I was like, people misunderstand Han Solo, and it made me really happy that you're someone who like understood what makes Han Solo a fascinating character. And I like used it to ask some other question. He goes, no, wait, go back, explain. And I said to him, I was like, Han Solo is a hermit who doesn't know how to talk to women. So the biggest problem I have with Star Wars fans are they think Han Solo is a ladies' man, and he just like, he can't talk to women. That's his whole thing, is he fumbles through things, but he's attractive, so people let him get away with shit. And he was like, yeah, he's awkward. He doesn't know how to function. And it made me so excited because I was like, I want more of this guy's take on Han Solo, a man who is just cannot function as a human being. And it makes me so sad that like people now are like, oh, Solo was okay. I'm like, no. I remember how mean you were about that good movie. It's the same thing that happened with Rogue One, a very good movie. People were so mean about it and then changed their tune, and that's why we got Andor. So I'm
Yeah.
like, is that all we have to wait for? Is 10 years down the line, someone's going to be like, actually, what's May and Osha up to? They were kind of fun.
Yeah, that's the problem with being so reactionary, right? Is where that's what I felt with when it came to Rey, who's one of my favorite all-time characters. I just feel like Rey is good enough to sustain an entire franchise for the future. And I felt that in the moment, and I feel that now. And I feel like this whole divisiveness of people telling me how wrong I am because I like Rey, when in reality, I feel like if you kind of open your eyes a tiny bit, like stop squinting at little details and just kind of open your eyes, you realize like she can kick ass, like seriously kick ass when it comes to just holding together a film, holding together a movie, which is why I was so excited to see that they did commit to that and they wanted to bring Rey back, even though I know a lot of people were kind of nervous about it because they weren't sure what direction they were going to go. But that to me is like the one thing that I'm holding up, like the Holy Grail, like looking at Indiana Jones style, like it's the Rey movie. And I'm just so precious with it. Like, I just want to keep it with me. And I'm just like, don't touch it. This is my movie. Because I do want it to be appreciated, beloved, taken care of, not rushed, not cut up, not made like an hour and 35-minute movie because you got to get more run times in theaters. Like all that kind of corporification of films that we're seeing now, I don't want it to touch the Rey movie. Like if they want to do that with Mandalorian and Grogu, go for it. But this one is like the one that I'm just like, please let the story breathe and let it tell its story. So how are you feeling about the Rey movie?
I'm really excited about the Rey movie. Here's the thing. I'm excited that the Rey movie is happening in quicker succession than like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because it broke my heart. Like I met Hayden Christensen however many years later after I've loved him since a teenager and said, I was like, I've been waiting like over a decade to meet you. And he was like, what? I was like, I grew up on these movies. Like these were my Star Wars as a kid and I love them. And then we've all seen videos of him crying on stage, realizing that all of these people who like, he thought everyone hated him and all of the kids who grew up watching it are like, no, I love those movies. I'm glad the Rey thing is happening a lot faster than what happened with Hayden and Ewan. Ewan a little less because everyone kind of agreed. Like, oh, in these movies, Obi-Wan's the one good thing. But like, especially with Hayden kind of coming to terms with the fact that like the generation who watch them love them, the Rey thing is happening a bit quicker because those kids are now teenagers on the internet and can talk about it faster than we could. So I'm really excited about that it is very quickly getting the redemption it deserves, with the exception of Rise of Skywalker, a movie I don't like. But on the flip of that, people are still doing the thing they have been doing, where it's like, oh, a strong female in Star Wars, like we don't have those. And it's, so you're doing the same thing you did when those movies came out, but where is the divide, especially with Lucasfilm? Where are you going to fall? Like, are you going to listen to the people who are mad about it still? Or are you going to listen to the people who you are, quote unquote, catering this movie to?
Yeah, exactly. Which is a huge fear I have, obviously. I just feel like, and I know this is me being extremely dire, but I feel like this just whole world has been dire, especially over the past few years. I just feel like we're reaching a point of just complete divisiveness, to the point of like, it's just openly, it's not ambiguous anymore. It's not hidden anymore. It's not something you say in your house to your close, cousin. It's something you say out loud. You are openly bigoted and you're openly saying like, hey, look who's running for office. I guess I can say that too. Like, yeah, women should bow before my feet and, Mexicans should get in the yard. Like, it's more and more openly racist, to the point of like, they're not afraid to say you're not welcome here because you are a Black woman, like Amandla. You're not welcome here because you are a person of color. And it just feels like that's the direction we're heading in. And now if film and if studios and if movies are listening to that, it's scary, because it makes you feel like, are we losing are we losing art? Like, is film art anymore? If we're simply regurgitating stuff we've seen in the past and just listening to one side of this divisive world that we're living in. I don't know. I'm just so pessimistic on art in general. It's tough.
Especially with franchises. I think like it's wild because this only exists in the franchise bubble, because you have movies like, I don't know, like Challengers, which is a black woman in the lead, where everyone's like, oh, I'm obsessed with this. Like, and that is just like not on the radar of these dudes. But then you have like Star Wars, which, you know, has always had women and people of color kind of playing major roles in it. Like, look at Lando, look at Leia. But in their mind, they're like, no, how dare you? You're trying to take over my white man franchise. And it's just like, what do you mean? It was never just your franchise. It was everyone's franchise. You can look at those old videos of the premiere nights of A New Hope. You can look at them of Empire Strikes Back, and it's women and people of color standing there along with the white dudes who think they own the franchise now. And so I do think like art will be okay. The franchise of it all is where I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I have had these debates with RB3. I feel like he kind of feels like, well, this is corporate slop anyways. Corporate slop is going to corporate slop. And I'm just like, I don't agree with that. I don't feel like Star Wars was ever corporate slop.
No,
I
really.
actually felt like the first original film, and obviously the continuation, has always been a little bit bold in its storytelling. It isn't simply, I don't know, 2003 Daredevil. Like, it isn't simply like, I don't know, I'm just throwing a movie out of my hat, but like that kind of movie, or like the original Fantastic Four, I'm sure there's fans of those movies, but those felt very much like corporate slop. And just like, we're not saying anything that special, but this is fun. And that kind of like, this is fun attitude of like the Fast and Furious franchise, other franchises that are just like, we're dumb, fun, and stupid, go watch it in movies. That never was Star Wars. That wasn't Star Wars. Star Wars did want to say something, did have something to say. And they are not just going to water down into the IP franchise side of the world. You can make good quality IP franchise films, but make it about something. I always go back when it comes to Marvel to Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. This love of Black Panther and this joy that people felt, and that kind of like from 2018 to when Wakanda Forever came out, just becoming so much more divisive when it came to Shuri taking the mantle. It disappointed me as a fan of Shuri and as a fan of her taking on the mantle and as a defender of it, because it felt like, what happened? Like, what happened between 2018 to now, to where now people are like, yeah, Black Panther was cool, but now they're going too far. Like, oh, this is too far. And I'm like, what's too far about it? This has always been what this movie is. This has always been what the, you know, what you can make with these kind of major, huge budget movies. It doesn't have to be huge budget slop and garbage or just dumb fun. I don't know. That's why for me, I'm like, is the artistic side to major movies gonna be gone?
Yeah,
is that
that's like, to be clear, I agree with all of what you said. I do think like that, like, I think art house films and like creative films outside of IP
always
are going to be fine.
Yeah,
it is literally like the IP. Like, go back to even like Iron Man 3. I don't think Marvel would take the swing on a movie like Iron Man 3, which is about a superhero's mental health. They wouldn't do it now. Or like, think of shows like Daredevil. The only reason it is coming back is because it became the success that it did. Where's Luke Cage? A show that like was an invincible man who wore a jacket with the bullet hole still in it because he is a black man in New York City. Like, those shows worked because they took a swing on them. Granted, it was a Netflix Marvel property, but it still was like they took a swing on them. And I thought we were going to get more of that stuff with Disney Plus. We had so much fun with like She-Hulk, and it's another one that these guys were so loud about that they killed it dead in the water, and you were just like, well, but that was a fun show, which was exactly what I wanted it to be, which, as many people pointed out online, is the same kind of deal Deadpool has, but because she's a woman who sleeps with Matt Murdock, none of them wanted to see it. And I think, I don't know, I hope that the Mouse, who I love very dearly, and I love almost every single thing that they've ever done, I hope that they recognize that they should take these risks, because it is why you have these franchises that we love so dearly. It's why they have a movie like Alien Romulus out right now, because a studio took a risk on a Ridley Scott idea. But at the same time, I don't know. It's scary.
That's my thing too. Is like so many times they feel like these won't make money, right? And the reality is they will. The reality is they can transcend, um, media. They can transcend movies. I think about Encanto, which meant a lot to me personally as a Colombian,
Mhm.
and now like you can't go 1 mile without someone
Mhm.
knowing a song from Encanto, and it's like maybe that in that moment they took that risk. I'm sure there was risk involved when they were saying let's make a story about a Colombian family. That's kind of weird, but at the same time now it's become such a mega success for them, to the point now where you look back at it and you say, what if they did take that risk? What if they were afraid? What if they were saying, "Whoa, the bigots, and we got to take the bigots' money. So if they see this, they're going to be mad." And it's like that fear that they might have, they pushed through it during that time period. But
They
now,
do
is that
for-
fear going to do it now?
But they do it for Disney and Pixar. It's very strange.
Yeah.
Like I don't fully understand because Disney and Pixar, they will take those risks. They'll make these stories. And granted, we grew up with these Disney movies that always had women at the center of them. So I feel like they're more likely to take a risk on a female-led movie. They're more willing to make a story like Encanto. They're willing to like make Moana and Moana 2, and now this like they're willing, and the Lilo and Stitch movie for whatever it's going to be with furry little Stitch, but they're willing to do that because that is what they've always known. And I think with Star Wars and Marvel especially, that is stuff they've kind of taken on, and they have to navigate the fan bases that go with it. Star Wars significantly worse than Marvel, and how they react to things. But I do think that they need to kind of figure out navigating that fandom, or else it's just going to continue to be tearing down good stories and regurgitating things that we don't necessarily need more of in the Star Wars franchise.
You're not going to have a future Star Wars fandom like 20 years from now. Those guys who are making YouTube videos about Star Wars now are going to be, either tired of it or just non-existent, and just like repeating the same stuff over and over again just to appease them is just not a successful business strategy. And you have to say, let's make something new, let's make something fresh, and let's put a different person behind the camera and in front of the camera, and not just make it, Luke Skywalker 2.0, and let's make it something else and something different. And hopefully we see that in the future. I just realized we went on for too long, so let's move on to Squad Up with Squad Leader Ace. So for Squad Up, for Squad Leader Ace, Rachel, I put you inside a scenario, and you have to tell me what persons or people you would pick from the Star Wars canon. So in this scenario, you are a Jedi investigating the claim of a dark side Force user on an industrial planet. This Force user is said to run with members of the Black Sun, so you are expecting heavy resistance. You need an elite team to investigate the claim and solve any immediate threat. You need these 6 things. You need a lead Jedi. This Jedi will be someone you trust and will make a great team leader. An investigator, a Jedi that anyone can think and can use the Force to investigate where certain stuff has come from. So a Jedi investigator, a Padawan that will have your back, a warrior, in case you have heavy resistance, you need a strong warrior who will help you defend. And this can be a Jedi or just any other warrior. A mediator, someone who can handle the planet of the Jedi's presence and make sure they can calm any situation that can rise up. And finally, a trusty creature. No matter what situation you are in, a reliable creature is always clutch on these missions. So you need a creature that is here to help you in case things pop off. So Rachel, first things first, who are you picking as your lead Jedi?
Question. So they can be from any era of Star Wars, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Lead Jedi. I'm going to go with Mara. I'm picking Mara Jade.
Nice. Mara Jade. You really are like the biggest Mara Jade fan I think I've had on the show.
I want to play Mara Jade in Star Wars so bad. I love her. I'll dye my hair red. I don't care.
Yeah. My lead Jedi. I feel like I need to show some love to some other like more unknown Jedis. I might pick Ayla Secura, or Isla Secura, if you want to call her Isla Secura. I feel like she has a good head on her shoulders. She knows what she's doing. Yeah, she's one of the best Jedis that we know of. So why not? I'm picking Aayla Secura as my lead Jedi just to make sure everything goes well and handles the situation appropriately. So who is your Jedi investigator?
So I had one in my mind, and now I'm like, I think I'm going Obi-Wan, but I'm going Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, like younger Clone
Attack of the
Wars.
Clones.
Yeah, Attack of the Clones, Clone Wars era Obi-Wan. Not go ahead and kill me, Vader Obi-Wan. Not that one.
I mean, this is what he does, right? This is Obi-Wan's forte. This is he's gonna investigate. He's gonna go to the 50s diners to make sure he knows the information.
And that's what he's gonna be standing in the rain.
Yeah, like this is like he's like, well, I'm basically a detective in here. I'm Batman. So I feel like he would kill it. He would absolutely kill it. For my choice for investigator, I don't know why, but I feel like he could do a good job. I feel like he's a smart guy. I'm going with Kanan Jarrus. Kanan is my investigator. I feel like he will ask the right questions and get to the bottom of any situation.
We were honest because my other choice is Ahsoka, which I was like, dude. So I was like, I was on the like Rebels train, but I was like, I think like Clone Wars Obi-Wan would be.
That makes sense. Who is your Padawan accompanying you?
Jackie. I love Jackie.
You're gonna get her killed again.
You get her killed again. Yeah.
That's a great one. I feel like, yeah, I kind of low-key was gonna go with Jackie too. So threw a wrench in my plan.
Either that kid's like Master Skywalker.
Yeah.
Like that's where my brain instantly goes when I hear about
I mean, there's Gunji. I could pick Gunji,
Yeah.
who's a great Wookiee Padawan, who's super smart and obviously super powerful. But I'm picking the OG. Why not? I'm picking the OG Padawan. We saw her come up as a Padawan, and a lot of people forget that when she came in, everyone hated her and wanted to like destroy Star Wars, and now people are like, that didn't happen. Yeah, it did happen. Her name is Ahsoka. She has her own show now. Ahsoka is my choice.
We could have different Ahsokas.
Yeah, I have Ahsoka. Yeah, little Ahsoka is what I have right now. And she is absolutely going to kick ass and make sure to have my back, but also keep me humble. She's going to be like, "What are you doing? That's not it. Like, you can't be doing that." So I feel like Ahsoka would make a great Padawan on this mission. Who is your warrior, Rachel?
Chewbacca.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Listen, I started this by saying Chewie is my favorite Star Wars character. No joke. So it's Chewbacca.
Yeah, I'm thinking along those lines too. I don't want to just pick a Jedi. I feel like picking someone who's just a powerhouse is just the right way to go about this thing. I'm picking, he's going to be in the Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm going to picking Zeb. I'm picking my boy Zeb. I got another little mini Rebels crew making here. I think he would be an absolute amazing warrior. Obviously, we know what he can do if you've seen Rebels at all. So that is why Zeb is my choice for warrior. Who is your mediator, your peacemaker on this mission?
So I want, this is very complicated because I'm going with an Organa. My brain is either Bail or Leia. I feel like I should, I'm trying to get on camera. I should for her, my little Leia, but also I love Bail Organa a lot. Bail Organa is one of my favorite, but I do think Leia just kind of has the best of all of it because she's force sensitive. She was a senator. She knows what's up. So I think I'm just going to go with Senator Leia Organa.
Yeah. Plus, she's a badass, right? So
yeah, she can fight if we need her to.
Yeah. If someone throws hands, she can throw hands back.
Exactly.
And I feel like she would kill that. I'm going along those same lines. I'm going with her apprentice, kind of. I'm going with Rey. Rey is my mediator. I feel like she would be smart, knows how to talk to people, is humble enough to keep everyone in line and keep everyone humble and make sure and let people know that they're coming from a place of peace and not war on that planet. So that is why Rey is my choice. Finally, the most important, who is your trusty creature on this mission?
I just realized I should have just picked Cassian for my detective, but he's not a Jedi. That's why I didn't pick him. I was like, wait, why did I pick Cassian? That's why. Basil. I love that little thing.
No way.
I love Basil so much. If not, it would have been Frog Lady, but she's pointless. But like, I think, I don't know. I love Basil. The minute I saw that thing, I was like, great. I don't need to know a single thing about whatever his deal is.
Damn.
Just a little snelling around. I love him.
Damn. I don't know if I can be honest with you, Rachel.
You ate Basil?
I kind of might have been the Basil hater
No,
in
not
the
the
group
Basil
chat
hater.
or in the tweeters, the Star Wars Twitter. I
Listen,
just felt like when he was like sniffing around. Go ahead. Sorry.
you put a furry thing in front of me. Like, I have multiple Ewoks in my home. I am like there's a furry Star Wars thing, and I'm gonna go find it. So I saw Basil. I was like, thank God they brought back the furry Star Wars characters.
What tripped me out, if I'm being honest, I love droids and I love Pip. And when Basil was sniffing around Pip, and I was like, what are you doing with my boy? Like, you almost had to pick a side. It was like, Civil War style, like Steve Rogers or Iron Man. And I was like, Team Pip. That's why ever since episode 4, when he was sniffing around Pip, I'm just like, leave my boy alone. Get out of here. Sniff.
I hate droids.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
I love R2D2.
Yeah.
If I could murder anyone in Star Wars, I would kill C-3PO.
Damn.
I hate C-3PO.
Wow.
Like, it is bad how much I hate C-3PO. I love Pip. I love like Dio is one of my favorite little things. I thought Dio is so funny. I can't wait to meet this BD1 thing. Like, the other droids I love, I hate C-3PO so much
Yeah.
that it is like, if you're furry, I'm just gonna love you because you're not C-3PO.
I have a Lola in the background. I don't know if you remember Lola.
I love Lola. It's Leia's.
She's right. I'll pull her out because I got a little mini Lola.
See, I love like the little itty. Here's what I'll say. With the exception of IG-11, because I love Taika, and the Matt Berry droid. If they're barely speaking, I love them.
Yeah.
C-3PO talks too much.
He
Yeah.
does talk a lot. Yeah, maybe that's why I didn't like Basil. Sorry. I'm Team Pip all the way. You know what? It's hard, right? Because my favorite creature, every time there's a creature question, I always pick the Varactyl. Shout out to Olga. I still think he's alive somewhere. You never know. But I kind of want to pick something like a Massive. I feel like a Massive or a Corellian Hound. So like a big.
What's the praying mantis thing?
Oh, the Acolyte.
Yeah, they have from Attack of the Clones.
That's a good one too. I saw an art piece. I don't know who did this, but like of an Acolyte, but it's like a tamed, almost pet-like Acolyte. I don't know if you saw that, and it's like little kids surrounding him, like little Jedi, and they're all petting him. And I'm just like, that's kind of awesome.
I like that. I like the 12-eye tiger-looking thing.
Yeah, the Mexican.
Yeah, it was like I was like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
We're just looking at animals that exist and being like, what if they had 4 legs? What if they had 12 eyes?
It's incredible. I love all those creatures. So to run it back, Rachel, just to let the people know, who are your 6? So first, who is your team Jedi? Team leader.
My team leader was, oh my God, I've already forgotten who my team leader was. My leader?
Yes, your team Jedi leader. Who's
Mara Jade. Oh my God. I was like, who did I pick for my leader? Mara Jade.
Yeah. Your investigator?
Obi-Wan Kenobi. But if not a Jedi, Cassian Andor.
There you go. Your Padawan?
Jackie.
Your warrior?
Chewbacca.
Your mediator?
Princess / Senator Leia Organa.
And then finally, your trusty creature?
Basil.
And for me, for my leader, I'm picking Aayla Secura. For my investigator, I am picking Kanan Jarrus. My Padawan is Ahsoka. My warrior is Zeb. My mediator is Rey. And my trusty creature is a Massive. So I'm going to bring the scariest hound, dog-like creature you're going to imagine. They're going to have my back.
Listen, I could have brought Itchy.
Yep, there you go.
Chewbacca's father-in-law.
That would have made perfect sense. Either way, Rachel, where can everyone find you? Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
You can find me at the Mary Sue. I also do some writing for Collider, and you can follow my 3 podcasts, Padre Pascal, Powell Pod, which is about Glenn Powell, and the Cinema Sibs on the internet. If you look up my name and those 3 things, they will pop up.
Awesome. And obviously, guys, you can find me at Squad Leader Ace. Make sure you follow us at First Cut TMO, and follow us right here on First Cut. Either way, guys, for the Sabacc the Block crew, we're going to be peacing out. So peace, deuces.